Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Hey folks, it's Monday, January 22nd, 2024, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Today marks the 51st anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision, which was of course overturned by this conservative Supreme Court. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris both spoke about the importance of reproductive rights in this country. Also on today's show, tomorrow, New Hampshire Republican primary, it really comes down to two candidates, Donald Trump and Nikki Haley, after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race on yesterday, endorsing Trump. Also, a lot of people highly critical of Senator Tim Scott for his endorsement of Donald Trump, where he even invoked the great civil rights leader, family and her favorite phrase, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." We'll talk about that as well. Also, the youngest child of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King has died. Dexter King passed away today at the age of 62 of prostate cancer. Also, 25,000 folks dead in Gaza as more pressure is put on Israel to call for a ceasefire in that region of the country. That and more today, folks, on Roland Martin Unfiltered, right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's rolling Martin, rolling with rolling now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's rolling Martin now.
Folks, 51 years ago, Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court, which said that a woman had a right to determine what she did with her body. It laid out abortion rights in America. But of course, this conservative Supreme Court overturned that decision in the Dobbs case. There's been lots of conversation all day as folks have remembered that decision. Today, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Wisconsin, kicking off her nationwide tour focusing on abortion access. It took place on the same day the Republican legislators are determining a bill that would ban abortion in Wisconsin after 14 weeks. In her comments, Harris called the bill a proposal for extremists because it does not include any exceptions for rape or incest. Here's her conversation. Here's some of her remarks.
I met a woman who went to the emergency room during a miscarriage and was turned away because the doctors were afraid they'd be thrown in jail for giving care. And it was only when she developed sepsis that they gave her the care she needed. We know that the majority of women who have abortions are mothers. If they live in a state with an abortion ban and they need to travel to receive care, God help her if she does not have paid leave or affordable child care. God help them if they don't have the savings to buy a bus, a train, or a plane ticket, or to book a hotel room. And while these extremists say they are motivated by the health and well-being of women and children, in reality, they ignore the crisis of maternal mortality. The top 10 states with the highest rates of maternal mortality all have abortion bans. The hypocrisy abounds. And let us be clear about what they're up to. These extremists want to roll back the clock to a time before women were treated as full citizens. Wisconsin to the 1800s. Just look at what happened here in this beautiful state of Wisconsin. After Roe was dismantled, extremists evoked a law from 1849 to stop abortion in this state. 1849, before women could vote, before women could hold elected office, before many women could even own property. In a state whose motto is forward, these extremists are trying to take us backward. Well, we're not having that. We're not having that.
All right, folks. Joining me right now is Dexter. She's a spokesperson for Planned Parenthood. She joins me from D.C. Glad to have you here on the show. We have seen how this issue remains potent when it comes to elections across this country. Even last week, Kayleigh McEnany on Fox News talked about how Republicans, conservatives, have lost every ballot measure. Do you see this as being strong in this 2024 election as it was in the 2022 midterms?
Yes, we absolutely do. I mean, abortion is on the ballot in 2024. We have as many as 10 states voters to give enough signatures to qualify for the ballot, or legislatures have referred initiatives all to protect abortion access. And as you mentioned, in 2022 and in 2023 with Ohio, so far we've seen 7 abortion-related ballot measures all come out in the side of abortion rights. This is an issue that motivates voters. People care about this, and when you ask them directly, they will vote for their freedom every single time.
And when you talk about for the freedom, again, we see significant numbers. We saw in Kansas, a lot of times called a red state. We saw it in Ohio as well. And you have Republicans who are desperately trying to keep this off of the ballot in November because they do not want to drive turnout in these 10 states.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, that's why we talk about this as a democracy issue. We saw it in Ohio last year where the entire state government was against the ballot initiative there. They tried to do everything. They spread disinformation. They tried to have another election in August prior to the November election to make it even harder to get to the 50%, to get to 60% instead. And we're seeing those same tactics used in states like Montana, where the AG just, is trying to disqualify that effort there. In Florida, the the AG is also trying to disqualify that effort, which has already gotten the number of signatures necessary. So this is really a democracy issue. They are trying to thwart democracy by targeting abortion rights, and this is going to have repercussions beyond just our reproductive freedom.
Obviously, conservatives hold a 6-3 majority on the U.S. Supreme Court. You now have Republicans who are now trying to go after the abortion pill. Look, they're even talking about Clarence Thomas in the Dobbs decision, even talked about going after birth control. So this actually goes way beyond an anti-abortion agenda. It is a wholesale assault on reproductive rights.
Yes, it absolutely is. And it's scary. But we always knew that the anti-abortion movement weren't going to stop with just Roe v. Wade. They want to fully control what people do. They want to control when, how, and if you're able to have a child. And that, like you said, includes contraception. It includes things like IVF. So people who want families, they're attacking their ability to do that. And, of course, abortion. So we need to fight on all levers and really raise the alarm, because people, I think, did not really believe that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned. And now they're not believing that they're coming for more than just abortion rights. They're coming for our ability to control our entire bodies, our lives, and our futures.
One of the things that we're also looking at is obviously this impact on women voters, but also specifically black women. What is Planned Parenthood's focus in terms of driving black women to the polls, especially younger black women, where President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, looking at polling numbers, they are extremely soft. How are you going to message to them? How are you going to market to them? How are you going to focus on getting them to the polls?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Black women are often the most impacted by these draconian policies. We know that. We've seen that in states across the country. And so they're a priority. And we also know that Black women are often the ones who save democracy. They're the ones that the Democratic Party relies on. But at the same time, they don't put in the effort to really cater to their needs and to center them when we talk about these issues. So at Planned Parenthood, that's something that we're working to do. We're working to center the voices of Black people. We're going to be launching a Black Health Equity Initiative very soon. So, Black women know that Planned Parenthood is a place where they can come and get their health care. And we're going to translate that support into voters, into people who can show up and vote for their rights at the ballot box in states across the country. Because you're right, Black women are going to be a critical piece of this. And it's important that we put them first, put people like me first in this fight, because we're the ones who are most impacted. And we're the ones who already have the hardest time getting the health care that we need, whether it's abortion care or something else.
All right, Dan, Deontay Metzger. We sure appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, when we come back, we'll chat with our panel about this issue as well as other news of the day. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Grow your business or career with Grow with Google's wide range of online courses, digital training, and tools. Gain in-demand job skills with flexible online training programs designed to put you on the fast track to jobs in high-growth fields. No experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace. Complete the online certificate program on your own terms. Stand out to employers, get on a path to in-demand jobs, and connect with top employers who are currently hiring. Take one professional career certificate program or all 6. Earn a Google Career Certificate to prepare for a job in a high-growth field like data analytics, project management, UX design, cybersecurity, and more. All professional career certificate programs must be completed by December 31st, 2024. Scan the QR code to complete the application. There are 1,000 scholarships available. Grow with Google and J. Hood and Associates. Be job ready and qualify for in-demand jobs.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Let's go. All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network. My panel for today, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emerita, Bennett College, author based out of Washington, D.C., Dr. Omokongo Dibinga, senior professorial lecturer, School of International Service, American University, also out of D.C., and a former Georgia State Representative, Renita Shannon, joining us out of Atlanta. Glad to have all three of you here. Renita, I'll start with you. This issue of reproductive rights has been very successful for Democrats and progressives, where you have these ballot initiatives. The question is, does that then transcend? Do you believe that that is going to be just as effective in November in the presidential election, these critical U.S. Senate races? Democrats obviously are looking at losing the Senate seat in West Virginia. They're trying to hold on to Sherrod Brown's seat in Ohio, John Tester's seat in Montana. You've got a competitive seat in Nevada as well. So how do you see this issue being used as a major get out the vote effort in November?
Well, it's going to be tough. The answer is yes and no. The reason why I say yes is because obviously this is an issue, particularly for Black women, which I want to quickly cover, because a lot of times people look at the ability to have an abortion as just a simple decision of someone deciding whether or not they want to become a parent. But it's a lot more than that. We know that for Black women in particular, we have a hard time getting medical professionals to listen to us. And so the more you restrict access to reproductive choices, including abortion, the data is clear that you increase maternal mortality. And as the vice president mentioned in her speech, you're putting doctors in a situation where they are having to risk being jailed or being fined or prosecuted by the state if they perform an abortion on someone. And so, this is a Black news show. I want to say, to Black women, think about that. We know that we do not get the same protections. People don't fight for us the way that they fight for white women. So when you're talking about having a doctor put their personal neck on the line in order to provide you care that could save your life, that is something that is unlikely. It's less likely to happen for Black women. Now, to answer, so that's why we actually need for abortion rights to be codified in law, because abortion is health care and it can make the difference between you saving your life and not saving your life. And we just can't put doctors in a position to where they will lose anything by providing you health care. Now, to answer your question, this is tricky from a politics perspective because in the states where you have seen ballot initiatives, they have been red states. And what you have seen is people, you know, when they're asked the question directly, do they want to protect abortion rights? They overwhelmingly say yes. You can see this in places like Kansas. You can see it in places that you would think the answer would be no. But voters have said they want to protect abortion rights. But the problem is they then so they answer that question in a way that says yes, protect abortion rights. But they then follow up by continuing to vote for politicians who are anti-abortion. And so none of the leadership in any of those states have changed. They still have red, conservative, Republican leadership. We know these folks are anti-abortion. And so that is where it really gets tough to make this the complete leading issue. What needs to be done is this has to be a part of the issues that voters really see as important to come out. And I do think that the Biden administration also has to do some reckoning around what is their specific plan to protect abortion rights. Because we all remember that in the beginning of the president's term, we Democrats had both the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and nothing. And the Biden administration was not able to actually just pass law codifying abortion rights and reproductive freedom, which is what we need. So we need a specific plan as to what the president is going to do around that doesn't devolve into, well, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema won't let me touch the filibuster so I can move my agenda.
Well, I'll be honest, Julian. I don't think this was an issue in terms of Biden and Harris not being able to get it codified. Let me just be frank. I think the problem is progressives and Democrats never thought the Supreme Court was going to do this. Now, here's what's crazy to me. The right was saying and yelling, we're putting people who are very strongly anti-abortion on the Supreme Court. That was always their deal. And so when this happened, I'm looking at Democrats and progressives and I'm going, what do you think was going to happen? And there were people who literally said, we never thought this was going to happen. And I'm going, but they told you. So it's sort of like, to me, it's crazy to listen to any Democrat say, we're shocked this happened when they told you this is what they were going to do.
You know, I don't think we took our eyes off the prize. As soon as even before those three justices, the 45 three justices were confirmed, who all perjured themselves in their confirmation hearings. But as soon as they were confirmed, we should have known this was going to happen. But of course, they were asked. They were asked by senators, "What do you think about it?" And they all just lied. They perjured themselves, but they'll never pay the penalty for that. And we knew that that's what they were going to do. It's not only that they perjured themselves and that they were on a mission. They were on a so-called pro-life mission, which was really an anti-woman mission. They were on that mission. Mission accomplished. They were able with Dobbs to overturn Roe, and this is a huge problem. Beyond that, what they've done is they've weaponized pregnancy. So in Ohio, Brittany Watts, African-American woman, pregnant, passing blood clots, was told she had to go to the hospital. The doctor could not help her. She went to the hospital. She was arrested. Now, all of this has gone away. She did have, the charges were thrown out. But just imagine that you're already losing your baby. You're already under distress. And then you're being charged as a criminal. This isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened. It happened, I remember writing about it in the early aughts, when women who were drug addicts and had asked for help were charged with delivering drugs to their fetuses. These people have fetishized fetuses. They literally have. And the challenge is that, as you say, progressive women, none of us thought this would ever happen. We didn't. And so we didn't think was happen. We weren't ready for it. And what we ended up doing is allowing these folks to essentially deny us choice. And Renita is absolutely right about the ways that this hits Black women just more acutely. Wealthy white women, and all white women are wealthy, but wealthy white women, she's got protection. She's got a doctor. If it goes to the hospital, it's not going to be reported. You're talking about someone who might be going to a clinic or someplace else, and that's not all Black women either. Some Black women have means, but let's be clear. We are more likely to have this visited on us. We're more likely to have our pregnancies criminalized. We are more likely as Black women to suffer disproportionately because of a lack of choice. And, most of the women who have abortions are already mothers. They don't want to lose their children, but they have many reasons why they must. Oftentimes it is illness. Because again, Renita is absolutely right, and we see this in the case of someone like a Serena Williams, wealthy as she want to be, but not being heard in the point of pregnancy. So the whole thing it's like such a throwback. And Roland, I'm class of 74 undergrad. I had a classmate who self-aborted. I went to Boston College, which was a Catholic college. In 1971 or 2, this young lady basically self-aborted. And, it was a horrible situation. Her life was saved by my mom, because they told me if I told it, I was a year younger than everybody, they were going to get me. So I called my mom like a big baby and said, "Mommy, I think she's going to die." She called the ambulance, and they came and they did kick my butt. Because I told, but just imagine seeing blood seeping below the dorm door, just seeping out, and that's what women had to do. Congresswoman Alma Adams, when she was in the North Carolina legislature, took to the floor one day with a hanger and held it up and said, "This is what you're returning us to," and that is what they're returning us to, and we. It will be there. I just saw a poll that said 2 issues were predominant in people's minds. 46% were called abortion, 45% called the economy. So this will be a wedge issue.
The thing here, if there is a lesson here, Omakongo, I really believe the lesson is for progressives, Democrats, liberals, is to understand this: the power of the courts. Yep. Conservatives always got it. They played long ball. We can go back, the decision by Ruth Bader Ginsburg not to step down when President Obama was there. She wanted to be replaced by a female president. She assumed, like many others, that Hillary Clinton was going to be that person. Didn't happen. You see, when Anthony Kennedy chose to step down under Trump, handpicked his replacement, Brett Kavanaugh. What I'm saying is, you have conservative groups that are focused, laser-like focus, on putting anti-abortion conservative judges, mostly white males, on the federal bench. You simply do not have the same level of intensity on the left, on the Democratic side. And let's also be honest, this was not a concern of President Barack Obama. It was not a concern of his chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel. This president, I fundamentally believe, has prioritized federal judges even more so than Obama did when he was president. And I think Democrats are now playing in a defensive posture because they now realize they screwed up by not making the courts a top priority.
Oh, absolutely. And let's add Mitch McConnell's shenanigans, is, lying about elections being too close and then doing the same thing as related to Amy Coney Barrett and all of that, and denying Mayor Garland an opportunity to be on the court as well. So we can go down that list. And you're absolutely right. People who identify as liberals, progressives, and the like, we have to get more militant in the work that we're doing. Look, after Roe v. Wade was passed 51 years ago, every single year after or shortly after, people who are anti-abortion would meet on Capitol Hill and have protests on the lawn every year, nonstop, for the next 40 plus years. Whether it was 10 folks gathering or hundreds, thousands, they never stopped. Their efforts to get rid of Roe v. Wade started the day after it was passed. And that's what people who identify as Democrats and liberals and progressives have to do now. The fight has to be daily, because it's going to take another generation or two before we can get a switch, if it's going to come down to the Supreme Court. Once again, if we don't get the House back and everything and have opportunities to codify it, but we have to have that same fervor. We can talk about that as relates to voting rights as well. all of this time, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, and the like, waiting to fall in love with the right person, waiting for this and that. Republicans fall in line. Not to mention these judges, they were not picked by Trump. They were given to him by the conservative organizations. These are the people that we want. Where's our list? Where's our organization that's saying to Biden, this is who you're going to get, or this is who we want? Every single everything that they've done to get rid of Roe v. Wade, we should be mimicking times 10 in order to bring it back, because you're right, it has not been prioritized. And on some levels, we could have the same conversation about what happened with voting rights as well. But I'm glad, the only thing that makes me satisfied about Trump just taking the primaries early is that it gives the Biden administration an opportunity now to start going hard and putting what Trump did, what the Supreme Court has done, in the face of everybody, because it's going to take this amount of time to really remind people of the dangers of what's going to happen if he comes back in, given the assault that we already have on women's reproductive freedoms. And as it has been said, abortion isn't just about a quote unquote, procedure. This is actual healthcare on so many levels, and people getting arrested. Andy Bashir, had that ad with the 12-year-old girl talking about what happened to her after she was raped. This is the time for Democrats, liberals, progressives to go hard, and not just until November. This has to be, I have two daughters, man. I have a teenager, 17, and a 15-year-old. And I think about what their future is going to look like if they were to move to one of these states. But if we don't get our act together, we could be looking at a national ban depending on how these folks are going. And it could be with Trump or Nikki Haley. So if we don't get it together now and learn from mistakes of the past, it's a wrap, Roland. And so we got to go hard and we got to go strong now. Otherwise, I'm afraid of what's going to happen, because it's already bad enough, savage and tragic and barbaric in terms of what they're doing to women's rights and families right now.
I'll say this before I go to break. That is, I think what has to happen is Democrats, progressives have to understand, when we talk about the power of the courts, it also goes beyond the federal level. This is where focusing on district attorneys, focusing on the judges who are elected statewide, all of those things absolutely matter. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We'll be right back right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Be sure to support us in what we do by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Your dollars make it possible for us to do what we do, to cover the stories that we do every single day on this show and on the network. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us, if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior or inferior and work together for their mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
Next on The Frequency, we're talking about racism. My guest, Danica Moore, comes on to discuss her fight against racism that she and her daughter face.
The thing about racism, you can't outrun it, you can't control it, you can't predict when it's going to happen to you or your seed.
She's also going to give us solutions on how to handle the situation. That's here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Next, on the Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, author Dr. Maribel Mori, on her astounding and enlightening new book, White Philanthropy, a history we're betting you've never heard before. Don't miss an eye-opening episode of the Black Table, only on Black Star Network.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
Big decision from the Supreme Court today in a 5-4 vote. They are allowing the Biden administration to cut some razor wire that was erected by Texas Governor Greg Abbott in violation of the U.S. Border Patrol. In Texas, they have been at odds with the Border Patrol when it comes to dealing with migrants coming across the border. The emergency request was filed by the Biden administration. Again, a 5-4 vote. Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, of course, they were two of the 4 votes. The Biden administration says the wire prevents agents from reaching migrants who have already crossed over the border into the U.S. Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Amy Coney Barrett sided with the court's 3 liberal justices, Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, in lifting the lower court's injunction. Again, the Texas Governor Greg Abbott installed the razor wire near the Rio Grande at Eagle Pass to address illegal immigration. The thing that we're seeing right here on Mokongo is amazing. Biden has talked about the need for a border deal. They have agreement on a border deal, a bipartisan agreement of the United States Senate. The Republicans are saying, no, we don't want to vote on one. We don't want to vote on one until Trump becomes president. And so they don't actually care about the issue. They want this to be a campaign issue. They actually don't want to address the border crisis at all.
And this is when it comes down to political sophistication as relates to the voters, because everybody always wants to put it at the hands of whatever president's in power. And so, especially when there's a Democrat in power. And so when people understand that it really comes down to the House, we're going back to our last segment. When are we going to get aggressive? Where's the real campaigning? Why are we not, hitting these areas harder as it relates to making sure people understand that this is something that the Republicans intentionally want to happen? When you're talking about this inhumane fencing system that was set up, that people were getting, mutilated in, it was barbaric and savage. And then on top of that, you have the governor engaging in basically in human trafficking, sending migrants across the country, sometimes to places they don't even know. Well, most cases, they don't know where they're going. And there are cases where they've been outright lied to about where they were going. Nothing is happening. The entire country is being placed on, is struggling under the system, which has a remedy. Even Lindsey Graham said that this is the best deal that we are going to get right now. I'm not talking Democrat. This is Lindsey Graham and several other hardcore conservative and Trump supporting individuals, but the House wants to block this. And so this is something yet again that we need to remind the American people of, that Republicans talk a good game, but they don't want to have real solutions. They don't want to have humane solutions. They know that this is a talking point that they can continue to raise money on, because a lot of other networks that are not like the Black Star Network are not doing their due diligence and calling them out and putting this front and center so that people can fully understand the hypocrisy. And too many lives are being lost and being destroyed during this process. And too many cities and places like Chicago and the like and New York City are being overrun by something that is preventable, especially with this new legislation that is proposed that Republicans in the House are blocking.
What you find here, Julian, is all about playing politics. And what's crazy is Senator Mitch McConnell has said, no, even if Trump becomes president, we're not going to get a better deal.
Mitch McConnell every now and then speaks the truth. The fact is that this is a decent deal, not the best one, but as long as I've known it, immigration has been a hot button for both Democrats and Republicans. We can go back and look into the 80s and look at immigration control legislation being passed and never being effectively implemented. Greg Abbott is an inhumane person. That's a contradiction. Inhumane, whatever, object. Putting up this barbed wire, first of all, impedes INS's ability to do their job, but secondly, puts people at risk. Why is he doing this? I think Omokongo has it right. Others have talked about this. They don't want to do anything that aids and abets President Biden in implementing his agenda, even if it's for the good of the nation. And we see this time and time again. If it happens under Biden, they don't want to do it. That's why they pushed back the budget agreement. They pushed back to March. Well, pushing it back to March isn't going to change anything if they want to basically stop social benefits is what they want to do. That little slice of Republicans, those the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, I forget what they call themselves. I guess I call them fools, but there must be another name for them. MAGAs, whatever, magnets, whatever they are. Here's what it is. If something good happens, it's not going to happen so that Joe Biden can take credit. And so they're willing to imperil the nation for that. Not only is this policy with the barbed wire inhumane, but it's non-productive. It's non-productive. People who are determined to get across the border are going to get across the border. And we know that. We've seen it time and time again. So why not pass legislation that has a compromise in it from both sides? The reason why they won't pass a legislation is because they don't want to be perceived as helping Joe Biden. How about helping America? How about helping people? How about helping Texas? Roland, I'm almost speechless, and I've never seen this barbed wire. I've read about it, of course, now I'm visualizing it. Again, this is not only inhumane, but it doesn't move us on immigration reform that we've been stuck on since the late 80s. We've been stuck on this stuff for a very long time.
But the thing here, Renita, is this here. We have had a border crisis for decades. This literally is not new. Ronald Reagan was president and actually signed an amnesty bill into law. And so there's this idea that, oh, there is this one fix for the border is simply illogical. And also, when people talk about build the wall, I don't think people even remotely understand how many miles of the U.S. border exist with Mexico. Okay, people have no idea if you actually look at the numbers. I've seen some reports estimated some 900 miles. Also, part of the problem is how land is there. It's hard to even ascertain what side is Mexico and what side is the United States. And in a lot of those places, you can't even construct a wall. And so you have to have a much more comprehensive approach to this issue than what we've seen thus far.
You absolutely do have to have a more comprehensive approach, and that is really what is going to solve both illegal immigration as well as what we're seeing where governors like Abbott are taking upon themselves to come up with the most inhumane solutions like this barbed wire in order to make it so difficult for people to cross that they literally are risking their lives in order to get here. And so the reason that we have illegal immigration is because we don't have a legitimate system where people can actually go through some type of process that is timely and that makes sense and doesn't cost them a fortune with no results in order to gain access to the country. And so I do think that, you know, again, and I'm going to keep saying this because facts are a stubborn thing. The Biden administration needs to articulate to the public what they are going to do as far as the big moves on immigration, because like you mentioned, immigration has been a topic that is longstanding. And Dr. Malveaux is absolutely correct when she says they're absolutely not going to do, Republicans aren't going to do anything right now because they have the power to stop, you know, the president from getting anything done. And that is just playing politics. So the answer that we all need, what we need to hear from the Biden administration is, what will you do next time if you get power back? Because when we had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, we did not see large moves from the Biden administration on this or abortion, as we were just talking about, in order to fix these issues. And so we need to know what is going to be the plan, and a plan that you're actually willing to move forward. Because at this point, absolutely not. The Republicans, the last thing they would do is give the president anything large to be able to campaign on. And that's why they're going to stymie any bill or anything that comes up that could give the president one more thing to campaign on.
So the total border, the total length of the border between U.S. and Mexico, 1,933 miles. You've got some 700 miles of border barriers. And so you're talking about 1,200 miles still left. And so, and let me also remind people, Donald Trump said that he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. I don't think their check cleared. They didn't pay for a thing. He was lying, just like he's always lying. All right, folks, gotta go to the break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered right here on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, Nurses are the backbone of the healthcare industry, and yet only 7% of them are Black. What's the reason for that low number? Well, a lack of opportunities and growth in their profession. Joining us on the next Get Wealthy is Needy Bartonelli. She's going to be sharing exactly what nurses need to do and what approach they need to take ownership of their success.
So the Black Nurse Collaborative really spawned from a place and a desire to create opportunities to uplift each other, those of us in the profession, to also look and reach back and create pipelines and opportunities for other nurses like us.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
It's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, folks, if you looked at different other shows and radio shows, you see all of this sort of back and forth about is Biden going to run? Is Biden going to run? Folks, will y'all stop and wake up? Joe Biden is running for re-election. Okay? Ain't nobody else coming. It's going to be Joe Biden running for re-election. And Kamala Harris is going to be his running mate. I don't understand, Congo, why people keep insisting on having these fake conversations, because they are going to be the Democratic nominees. That's who's on the ballot. People also, I don't think, even remotely understand what it requires to even get access to the ballot. And so it ain't changing. It's going to be those two. So I say, Democrats, shut up, stop wasting time with the conversation, and just recognize that's who is going to be, that's what it's going to boil down to. Deal with it.
I mean, come on. I mean, like, get in line and get with the program. I mean, while at the same time this is happening, Roland, Republicans are falling, tripping over themselves, lining up behind Trump. Burgum, Scott, all of these guys. And I do believe that if when Nikki Haley drops out, she's going to end up endorsing him too. They don't care. They are falling in line. All the people who condemn them and critique them, with the exception of Christie, this is what they're doing. And on top of that, we have to understand that you got this no-name party out there, no labels party out there, I should say, that's looking for a third-party candidate that's also going to play spoiler in some way, shape, or form. And maybe it'll be spoiler for Biden or Trump, depending on who the candidate is. But Democrats need to come to the reality that nothing's going to change. Biden is our nominee. I mean, like you said, what else do you need? They're putting out campaign ads. I'm Joe Biden. I approve these messages. All these ads that are trolling Trump, some incredible ads, I must say. Look at Vice President Harris today in terms of her comments there. They're acting, walking, talking like political candidates, like Democrat candidates for president. If we don't start getting in line now and start playing these games, because we're still acting like it's all good, like they're like, Trump maybe can't win. The longer we take to get on board with Biden and his agenda, and again, of course, as challenge it, critique it, that's what we do. And that's what I mean. But when it comes down to it, man, it really comes down to not comparing him to the almighty, but like he says, comparing him to the alternative. And in this election, democracy is on the line in every way, shape, and form. So all of y'all who just think that it's going to be somebody else, I don't know who y'all are talking about. But this is reality check time. This is gut check time, because the Republicans, they are only getting, we can call Trump everything we want, but they are getting stronger as a party right now as they start to gather around Trump for their nominee. And we need to stop playing these games before it's too late.
And oh my God, Renita, I really wish these idiots would stop. These idiots on the Fox News and other places, that idiot Roger Stone, oh my goodness, the plan is to slap Michelle Obama. I keep telling these people, I've heard it come out of her mouth. Michelle Obama hates politics. She ain't running for nothing, and is definitely not going to be president.
It's pretty obvious that the former first lady hated politics because she was it seemed like she only talked when she really needed to talk. You can tell she's somebody who did not really particularly enjoy politics. And I think even since President Obama left the presidency, I think that we've even gotten quotes from Michelle saying that, there was a lot, she resents that there was a lot she couldn't say when President Obama was president. So, I mean, this is definitely not a person who is itching to get into politics. But beyond that, I think that this is just really a case of misinformation, disinformation meant to to mess with the votes on the left. Because, at the end of the day, I firmly believe that anyone who wants to run has the right to run, but there is nothing to indicate that President Biden is not going to run for re-election. He's already started running. I mean, he's literally setting up apparatuses in different states. He's already contacted people in Georgia to get his campaign going. So, I mean, he's already running. So I don't understand putting out information saying that he's not going to run for re-election unless your intention is to create a bunch of chaos and put rumors out there that will confuse the voters and make voters think that we're in a precarious situation as far as whether or not President Biden is going to run for re-election. Like, he's definitely running. And I think anybody who says that there's a question of whether or not he will run is someone who is literally trying to use mis and disinformation in order to mess with the vote.
And this right here, Julian, is game on. I mean, right now it's game on. Let's be perfectly clear, okay? You got the New Hampshire primary tomorrow. DeSantis has dropped out. Nikki Haley's in the race. Trump is going to demolish her. This is going to be a race between Trump and Biden. And people need to understand, stop this wishful thinking, like there is this candidate out there who's just going to swoop into the race. That ain't happening. And so accept it for what it is, and now let's focus on winning. That really should be the mentality.
Roland, Democrats don't learn. I mean, we had this kind of inter-party BS in 2016. People couldn't vote for Hillary because they didn't like her. People, people were looking for plastic Jesus. In other words, a magic candidate. Well, there's not going to be one. And there's not going to be one this time around either. It is Trump and Biden. Trump and Biden, that's what it is. And the age difference is not significant. Nikki Haley is running around talking about age. She says the American people don't want a rematch. Well, that's what they're going to get. The process, one of the things that people forget, I'm speaking to my brother Cornel West here indirectly, and as well as Marianne Williamson and some of them other ones. How many state ballots are you on? The process of getting on a state ballot, you just don't snap your fingers and you're on a ballot. This is a multi-month period. Often it requires a collecting of signatures. It requires other things. So if you were going to be a third-party candidate, independent candidate, you probably should have started a couple months ago, or at least a month ago. So nothing is going to emerge but what we have. And what we have is what we're going to have to deal with. Now, people can grouse, and that's what Democrats do. I forget who said, I don't belong to an organized party. I'm a Democrat. Somebody, maybe it was Will Rogers, somebody said that. And it's just so apropos. Democrats don't get their act together while Republicans do. And look at them. I mean, DeSantis was very ugly toward Trump. But then at the end, I'm going to endorse you. Trump was very gracious toward him. Who knew he had it in him? Tim Scott has come around. It's like, and then there were two. Then there were two. And so for folks to expect anything else is to basically be delusional, simply delusional.
I'm going to bring in here Tamia Booker. Tamia is founder and managing director of T. Booker Strategies. Tamia, look, when you see what's happening on the Republican side, I mean, yeah, it's down to Trump, Nikki Haley. Bottom line is he's going to crush her. Hell, you've got Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina endorsing Trump over Haley, North Carolina governor. Congresswoman Nancy Mace endorsing Trump over Haley in South Carolina. Frankly, if you're Nikki Haley and you don't win your home state, it's over.
That's correct. And so tomorrow's really critical for her, too. Trump is leading her by double digits. She may be trying to peel off some of the Christie voters who will not vote for Trump. But if she can't carry her home state, it's going to be very difficult for her to be able to keep going in this race. And so she said after Iowa was a two-person race, and she was right when DeSantis dropped. But after tomorrow is going to be a real critical moment for her. If she gets trounced tomorrow, then she really needs to make a decision on what she's going to do. And given her comments over the last couple of days and losing the support of a senator in her state, I don't know what the pathway looks like for her after tomorrow.
And with that said, I think what this also does is it frankly changes the whole deal. So now from a media standpoint, everything is not just covering all the different movements over there. It's really now breaking this thing down to the two candidates, a repeat of 2020. I personally think that's actually better for Biden, Harris against Trump, because what happens is you now have a binary choice. It's now down to those two, and for every crazy statement that Trump makes, people now have to see that in terms of from a general election perspective versus a Republican primary.
Exactly, and it takes the time for them to tear each other apart. And President Biden and the vice president, they can just campaign and talk about the things that they're doing, and they can continue going on. Right, today is the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, and the vice president was in Wisconsin talking about legislation that the Republicans were putting forward to ban abortions, while Nikki Haley and Donald Trump were just throwing punches at each other, right? It's such a contrast where they can continue to go across the country and talk about what they're doing to protect the American people. The two of them can just keep fighting each other back and forth. And for Nikki Haley, she can keep hurting herself by fighting Trump, but that doesn't bode well with the Republican Party. As we've seen over the last, now we're looking at 8 years since 2016, they have been attracted to his fear-mongering, his bullying, and they like it. And so she can keep going up against him for years and years at a time, or days and days at a time, and it's not going to help her. But it'll look good for us because as she keeps talking her comments about this country never being racist, and then you contrast that with her talking about her struggles with racism as a brown woman in South Carolina, she's discrediting herself, and people are saying, okay, I think I'm going to stick with Biden. And so that helps the Democratic Party. And so we'll let them continue to fight it out, and Biden and Harris can keep campaigning throughout the year.
Last question I have for you when we look at, again, how this is shaping up. You look at what Democrats are doing in South Carolina. They are taking out ads. They're running. And I saw this story in national media where they said, oh, they're trying to prove to black voters they care. No. Here's why I look at this totally different. I don't look at South Carolina as a way to prove. Frankly, I don't care. Let me be real clear. I don't care how many votes they get in the primary. I think the focus has to be on the midterms. And I think people are also making a mistake when they say, oh, the money they're spending in South Carolina is wasted money. No, what you're trying to do is you have to begin to what I believe, you have to be in what I call an education and enlightenment phase. And I think what they should be doing is not focusing solely on 7 states, not saying, well, we're just going to put all of our attention into Georgia, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, and Arizona. I think what they have to do is be using this period here, January through, I say, July, August, be in the intense education and enlightenment. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we've done. This is what we achieved. And if people keep focusing on age, their response should be, did we do this? Did we do this? Do you want somebody half Joe Biden's age who can't get stuff done? Or do you want stuff that actually gets done? And so they should be in just a constant repeating what was accomplished and what they want to accomplish with another 4 years. That also has to be properly articulated.
I completely agree. And I remember we talked about this last year about making sure the Biden administration does tout their accomplishments. And that's exactly what they should do. The campaign strategy, they will always focus on battleground states. And that's something that the pundits always like to talk about. But to your point, that's not the whole country. You have to still campaign everywhere and tell everybody what's happening, because when you are actually presiding as an administration, you are not only helping people in those battleground states, you are helping the United States. So if they are talking to people in South Carolina, then they are talking to people in South Carolina as they are talking to people in New Jersey, as they are talking to people in Minnesota. And I'm naming non-battleground states for that exact reason, because when we're talking about policies that impact people, we're talking about them in all states. And so when you're talking about trying to persuade people, which happens later in the year, to your point, then yes, that strategy does change, but that doesn't mean you ignore all voters. But no, you should absolutely make sure that you are educating everybody on what the administration has done to impact everyone. When I worked in the Obama administration and we worked on the Affordable Care Act, we were helping Americans get health insurance all over the country. And when we campaigned in the beginning, we talked about making sure Americans had health care and they were able to have health insurance. And that's what we wanted to do. When we were able to elect President Obama, and then when the Affordable Care Act was passed, we were able to enroll Americans all over the United States in health insurance. And that's exactly what that needs to happen here, right? When you're campaigning, you're talking to everybody, not just certain people in certain states. So if people want to know why or think it's pandering, that's not the case. You're supposed to talk to all Americans, because then the counter is, why aren't they talking to me? And that's not the case here. So it's important that the administration is talking to everybody. It's important that the vice president is talking to voters in Wisconsin about what's happening to them. It's important that they're all in Virginia tomorrow to talk about reproductive health and the consequences that can happen in Virginia. So that's exactly why they need to make sure they're traveling everywhere and talking to everybody.
Here's a perfect example, Renita. I saw this tweet from Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn talking about how America, we're no longer energy dependent, how we're falling down. And there was a brutal fact check on Twitter that said, no, America actually is producing more oil than we've ever produced beforehand, how our production outpaces other countries. But that's what you see. And to me, they have to be hammering back every single moment against stuff like that, saying our policies are the reason why gas prices are staying down, hitting folks, even now, how inflation is dropping. You've got Steve Schwarzman, big-time Republican donor, CEO of BlackRock, who said, we think the Fed has it wrong. We believe inflation is already below 2%. Okay, big-time Republican. Guess what? Now Trump and the others can't yell how high inflation is. And they should be saying the Inflation Reduction Act actually made that possible. That really has to be, I think, the constant mindset. It has to be the hammering every day of what was accomplished, what was done, and how the policies that we passed made all of that possible.
Well, to your point, and I can say this as the only person on this panel who has had to campaign to voters and who has been elected, voters are very good at looking at your record and separating what you are telling them versus what they can literally just look up and see if you're telling the truth and see if you're walking the walk or if your walk is matching your talk. And so we are long gone are the days where, you had to listen to whatever your politician told you and you had to just take it as fact. People can actually look up and see if you're telling the truth. You always have to run on the record that you created. And so this is not just advice for the right. This is also for the left. Whatever you've done, good or bad, you're going to have some explaining to do to voters. And so I think that is a lesson for both Democrats and Republicans in this upcoming election cycle, is that voters know when you're being authentic. They know when you are campaigning on what you say you've done and if you actually have done that. And they also will critique you on whether or not you performed on the priorities that they have in order to get their vote. Because make no mistake about it, and a lot of times this is talked about, on this show, is a lot of talking about there being two choices. But no, people are willing to not vote. That is a third choice that no one ever talks about. And as much as we would not want people to do that, and we feel like everyone should participate in democracy, voters are more than willing to just say, if I don't see myself reflected in a candidate or on this ballot, I will just stay home, especially with how difficult they are making it in certain states for people to even be able to access the vote. So I think that everybody has got to get hip to the new reality, which is don't come out and say things like the example you gave, Roland, that are not actually true, because people will just fact check you on it.
Well, and I think that, Tamia, then I'm going to go to Julian, then I'm going to Congo, that, again, you make a mistake if you assume people know. And I think it's a matter of connecting the dots, making it clear that project, we made it possible. That project, we made it possible. That big bridge you travel over every single day that has been repaired, our dollars made that possible. You have to take ownership. You have to brag. Frankly, you got to do what Trump did. He took credit for crap he didn't even do. They can take credit, and they've got the record to back it up. I just don't think Democrats are forceful enough to do that. I mean, even before Donald Trump, there was a thing we called in Texas Graham-standing, where Senator Phil Graham would vote against bills, yet when the thing was passed, would issue a press release outing the money that was coming to Texas. And he voted against the thing. And so you got to, look, yeah, own the bad stuff, but guess what? If I did some good stuff, I'm telling everybody what I did.
Exactly. And I think Republicans in Congress just did that last year with the Inflation Reduction Act. They were out here saying that they voted for it when most of them voted against it. So I think that you're right. It's very important that we take credit when we do great things, and Democrats need to do more of that. And I think we tend to say that we did something and move on to the next thing and get right back to work, but not really own that and remind people. Everyone is busy and operating in their silos sometimes, but it's really connecting those dots. Like you said, brag here, connect the bridge, connect the student loan forgiveness, connect all of those things, connect the voting rights, connect the abortion protections, connect all of that, and say it over and over again. What I learned when I was first in politics as super effective is that when you're trying to get people to vote for you, or you're trying to get people to just go out and vote, when they're annoyed because they've heard it enough and they're like, I've heard it, I got it, it's election day is this date and I have to go here, that's when you know you've done a good job, because they feel saturated to the point that they've got it, it's off the top of their head, and they know what to do. And we need to implement those exact same strategies when it comes to talking about what the administration has done for people in their neighborhoods and in different communities, because people need to actually know what has happened. And to your point, Trump made sure he held up a lot of things to make sure that he was able to take credit for the things that he said that he did, even though he didn't do that. And this administration needs to do the same thing.
Julian.
Yeah, fully agree with everyone who's talked about beating the horse, just beating it again and again and again. I think one of the biggest flaws of the White House communications team is that they really don't push it out there as hard and as frequently as they should. So that I talk to young people who don't get, I mean, I talked to a little brother a couple days ago. He says, well, Biden didn't do student loan forgiveness. And I said, well, you know, they don't understand how government works because civics is not being taught anymore. So Biden personally is not going to give you a check. He's got to go through legislative process. And we need to help them understand that. But secondly, millions of people have been affected with the workarounds that Biden has done, President Biden has done. And so they need to talk about that more. They need to say X number of million people have had their loans forgiven. We wish we could do more, but the Supreme Court wouldn't let us. So they understand it's not a one-off. And there's so many other things like that. There's a thing going on now where if the little man who's a speaker, forgot his name already, Mike Johnson from Louisiana, if he has his way in terms of pushing back and cutting out budget, one of the things on the table, Roland, is that people will have to go in person for an interview to get food stamps. Go in person. Now, that was always a requirement, but it was lifted during COVID, and they found there was no more fraud. Nothing bad happened because people did not have to go in person. But now either you have to go in person or you have to be available for a random phone call. What is a random phone call? They could call you anytime. And if you're not there, they could cut off your food stamps. Now, we need to talk. People on the D side need to talk about these mean-spirited policies and what they really mean. But basically, Democrats do not toot our own horn. I don't know, and it's not that any of these people are modest. We know all of them. Is there a modest congressperson that anybody on this panel knows? I don't think so, because I know most of them, and so do y'all. So I don't know why we choose to be so modest when we've done significant things and they need to be dealt with. The other thing, of course, the Orange Man is taking credit for some of the COVID relief. Well, we know full well that he opposed all of that. But why do news anchors and others not fact check? The fact check, something comes out of his mouth and they just let it go. And so they need to be fact checking, but so do we. Because the man tells lies more frequently than he changes his draws. And it is an absurd thing to see this man lie and to see Democrats sit silently as he lies.
You know, Makongo, actually, I think the way from a student debt deal is not just talk about the millions. I think, and again, to me, that this is an ad. This is on social. Here's how you do it. You literally have the person stand there and they say, Joe Biden, thank you. Mm-hmm. Next one, Kamala Harris, thank you. Next one, President Biden, thank you. Next one, Vice President Harris, thank you. And you see the person, you see their name, you see how much student loan debt was forgiven. And all of a sudden, and you drop it. My whole deal is I ain't speaking nowhere unless I got 5 people sitting in the audience who had their student loan debt canceled. We're talking about 3.9 million Americans, $140 billion. And so every place I go, I'm doing it. I'm putting a name to the face at every single deal. I'm not just talking in these general terms.
Absolutely. And they absolutely have to do work like that. And in addition to that, a lot of these super PACs, who are out there putting out all these ads for for Trump, we're on the Democratic side, I see the Lincoln Project, which is founded by former Republicans, doing more anti-Trump stuff than some of the Democrat super PACs out there. They also could be putting these types of ads together for the Biden administration. But you're absolutely right. The Biden administration needs to take the lead on that. And while they're at it, they can also have people out there talking about the diabetes medication and all of those types of issues as it relates to the, the insulin being dropped. They can come up with so many campaigns of real people who have real life experiences of what Biden is doing now, not projects that may start 10, 15 years down the road. Those are great, but there are real changes happening now, and people need to speak up. And one other thing I want to say is that this is also the time that the Biden administration needs to get in front and get on Black-owned media and Black spaces on a regular basis. One of the things that helped Trump win is that he would call up freaking AM stations, man, and just talk to anybody. And people would circulate that stuff because a president or presidential candidate called them and hyped them up. They need to do that. Biden needs to be here. Vice President Harris needs to be here. Other areas that target Black people as well, even if they're not Black-owned, they need to do that. But specifically, need to come here because Biden and Kamala Harris, they still have the largest bully pulpit. Today, because of that speech that she gave in the networks I was listening to before this show, it was the first time the stories weren't dominated by Trump because Vice President Harris was out there crushing it. And so I'm hearing her voice again. They need to dominate that as well, and that's also going to help them get their message out. But come to the Black Star Network, y'all.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. Going to a break. We'll be right back on the Black Star Network. I am here at the Grove 23, which is the private golf club of Michael Jordan. I'm a guest of Gary Sheffield, former Major League Baseball star, and so had an opportunity to enjoy today. So glad to be here in one of their villas, and so I appreciate the great hospitality of the folks here at the Grove 23, so we appreciate that. Michael Jordan, had an opportunity to see him earlier today at the finished our round. Folks, you want to support us, what we do, please join the Black Star Network. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037, that's 096. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal are Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Don't forget, you can also download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV, and should get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available on bookstores everywhere. You can also download the audio version on Audible as well. Folks, we'll be right back in Florida.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we talk about a hard, cold fact. Not all healthcare is created equal in this country, especially if you're a person of color.
So many of us, Black families, we rely upon each other heavily. A lot of us aren't necessarily sure how to best communicate with our healthcare providers.
How to take charge and balance the scales. Your life may depend on it. That's next on A Balanced Life on Black Star Network.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior or inferior and work together for the mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
I'm Paula J. Parker, truly proud of the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
I got it? All right, folks, welcome back to Roland Martin Unfiltered. So, to me, I want to bring you in here over the weekend. As I said earlier, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott endorsed Donald Trump. Oh my God, let's just say it was interesting. But one of the things that he did was he invoked the phrase that we often associate with Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Some people ripped him for trying to sound like a Baptist preacher in endorsing Trump. I've never seen, let's be clear. My goodness. Tim Scott is doing his best to try to be a VP. What do you make of how he has comported himself since dropping the race?
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to be vice president, and it couldn't be clearer. The stuff coming out of his mouth is unbelievable. He's just really been a true disappointment over the years, if I'm being honest. And the way that he, I worked in the Senate, and the way it started working with him and, the things that he wanted to work with on civil rights and helping Black people to the way he is now talking about Trump and talking about the country not being racist and quoting the quotes that he uses. It's just, when you watch someone just completely change because they want leadership and power, it's disheartening and frustrating, and it's sad to see. And so hearing that and watching it, I couldn't stomach it anymore. And you're exactly right. He wants to be vice president. And please, I'm begging people, please vote for Biden and Harris. I really don't want to see it next year. I really don't. I can't say it any other way than that, to be honest.
Renita, what did you make of the speed of Senator Tim Scott?
Tim Scott is one of these people who also said that the country is not racist. He said that along with Nikki Haley. And the only thing I want to say is I see that the party of majority white people did not vote for you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Tim Scott is somebody who I think should have been a really good test as to whether or not black folks can find something for themselves in the Republican Party, because he's already a U.S. senator. And so unlike the other people who previously ran for president on the Republican side, they had never been elected to anything, which makes it does make things harder a lot of times. Not that it's impossible. Obviously, we saw that Trump got elected, but I'm speaking about the Herman Cains of the world and other people who did not have infrastructure on their side as far as like political infrastructure. They didn't have a record that they could run on. They really had nothing except asking voters just to trust them. Tim Scott has, all the things that I just mentioned, and he still was not able to do well in the primary. So I just think it's very interesting.
Lord, if y'all want to hear somebody sell their soul, watch this.
We need a president who will close our southern border today. We need Donald Trump. We need a president. We need a president who will unite our country. We need Donald Trump. We need a president who will protect your Social Security and my mama's Social Security. We need Donald Trump. We need a president today who will stop the crime and recklessness in the streets. We need a president who will restore law and order. We need Donald Trump. Oh, we need a president who will lower our taxes and not raise our taxes. We need a president like Donald Trump. We need a president who understands the American people are sick and tired.
Oh, my.
Sick and tired of being. Go ahead and play. Hold up. Go ahead and play, because I got tired of hearing it. I didn't want to cut it off, but go ahead and play that last part right there again. Because if y'all sound, Tim, what you trying to do? Tim, really, what you trying to do?
We need a president who will lower our taxes and not raise our taxes. We need a president like Donald Trump. We need a president who understands the American people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We need a president our foreign adversaries are afraid of.
Oh, please.
We sick and tired of being sick and tired. Julian, go ahead.
Roland, I mean, that's Mr. Bojangles there. Dancing and shucking and jiving with his eyes getting big. It's a minstrel show. But, he wants to be vice president so bad he got engaged. He got to be almost 60 years old and couldn't get engaged. But now that he's trying to be regular, he went and got himself engaged. This man is disgusting. And to use Rosa Parks' words is beyond disgusting. But, we know he may have done some things in the Senate, but he's forfeited all that with this clownish, buffoonish behavior and his blind fealty to a very flawed man who he just months ago was trying to replace. Now he sees a lane to become vice president, but I would love for him to be the vice president nominee so that Kamala Harris could take him and just wipe the floor with him. And when she got finished wiping the floor, she could clean the windows with him, because he just is, this is just an absurdity. But you know what? He has figured out how to, first of all, when he announced that he was running for president, I told someone, if I had $1 for every time he said God, I would have myself a nice meal at the Four Seasons somewhere, because he acted like God was about to be his running mate. So at least this mess, he didn't invoke so much God, but he invoked a lot of nonsense. And we know this is how we know Tim Scott. We know that he's blindly ambitious. We know that he has Republican fealty, and we know that he clearly does not have good sense. And he shows us that every time he opens his mouth. That was disgusting.
I had to just sit here and laugh on McCongo watching that. First of all, trying to sit here and talk. Anybody on McCongo who gives a speech and says Donald Trump is going to unite the country, they got to be high.
They got to be high. They got to be delusional. They got to be on something. I mean, I've never seen a more opportunistic politician with no chance of rising anywhere beyond being a senator. I mean, it was embarrassing, but I mean, not really. I guess embarrassing can't be the word, because this is just who he is. I mean, he's always been somebody who's been conniving and will kiss the butt of whoever he needs to try to get to the next level. I do believe, however, that because of how powerful the issues of, and I don't know if this Booker disagrees, but because of how powerful the issues of abortion are and what's going on relating to that, I think that Donald Trump is going to pick a female as his vice presidential candidate, because I think that having two men out there who are speaking against women's rights are going to hurt the party even more. And so I think he's going to have a woman who's going to get up there and talk about being, quote unquote, pro-life and all of this other type of stuff to try to minimize some of the things that Vice President Harris is saying, or at least have two women go at it. And so I think, Tim Scott's time is truly past. And I don't believe that the Republican Party is ever going to embrace him or Ramaswamy or any of these guys in any way, shape, or form. This MAGA crowd, they have decided that they want it to be white and male at the top, and as well as in the VP race. And so this is not... I don't know, Tim Scott just looks so out of place, man. He sounds out of place. He looks out of place. And they just look at him as a joke. And so now that, Donald Trump could basically say, I got my other African-American right now. Where's my African-American like he did before? It's right here with Tim Scott. And Tim Scott is just disgraceful. And to disrespect the legacy of Annie Lou Hamer like that, no respect, no love, but we didn't have any for you anyway.
And of course, getting engaged over the weekend. Too late, bro. Too late. They already were questioning whether you were gay during the primary, and he had to actually come and roll his girlfriend out. So, yeah, that's a little too late. Tamia, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
All right, folks, got to go to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
We just have one of the oldest cultures that's desperately needed for mutual salvation. That's the consciousness. We have the keys in our roots to save mankind. We get to see the condition of other countries, other oceans, other cultures. And if we believe in God, a lot of us do, He's telling us if you don't get rid of that stuff that makes somebody superior or inferior and work together for the mutual salvation, everybody's gone.
Hi, I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I don't play Sammy, but I could. Or I don't play Obama, but I could. I don't do Stallone, but I could do all that. And I am here with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
Tiara Cohen has been missing from Miami since December 26. The 17-year-old is 5 feet 1 inches tall, weighs 120 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Tiara Cohen is urged to call the Miami, Florida Police Department at 305-579-6111, 305-579-6111. Folks, the death toll of Palestinians in the Israel fight with Hamas has now hit 25,000. The health ministry in the Gaza Strip said that 178 people were killed by U.S.-backed Israeli troops Sunday, bringing the confirmed death toll to 25,105. A further 8,000 Palestinians are missing and believed to be dead, and at least 62,681 people have been wounded since the conflict began on October 7th. In addition to that, South Africa has filed a suit against Israel for genocide at the International Court of Justice. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres chastised Israel over the level of destruction Israel's war in Gaza has caused, including the deaths of more than 150 UN staffers. The reality of this is that the Wall Street Journal has been reporting this, that the Biden administration has been pushing very hard for the Israelis to pull back when it comes to the attacks. What you have, though, is an obstinate Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has made it clear he does not support a two-state solution. So if this does not if there's no ceasefire, if you don't have anything like this, if Netanyahu just continues to say, I'll do whatever I want on the Congo, that is going to have serious repercussions for President Joe Biden in his reelection bid.
Most definitely. And Joy-Ann Reid had posted a video today of showing IDF bombing the last university in Gaza. And the fact of the matter is, it was an Israeli official who, last week was, I think they read this from the South Africa trial, I'm not sure where, but said, without the weapons from the United States, we have nothing. We cannot carry on what we're doing right now without the weapons and missiles and artillery that's coming from the United States. Biden is continually, at least 2 times, has surpassed Congress to get weapons over there. And, so he can talk the game and talk about, and I believe that they are pushing Netanyahu to embrace a two-state solution. But as long as you're talking about it, but then you're sending over the weapons that are responsible for this destruction, you can't be taken seriously by those who believe in peace and believe in a ceasefire. And I do believe, again, we've talked about this even before October 7th happened. All Trump needs to do is get 50 point plus one. He doesn't need to, increase his base. He just needs to shrink Biden. So when you're looking at places like Michigan with the largest, Arab community in the United States, and many people who are supportive of the Palestinian people, who are looking at this as a genocide and the like, who are saying they will never vote for Biden. Damn the fact that Trump might come in and also round up Muslims in the United States that he's talking about and be infinitely worse than Biden. It doesn't matter, because right now, the optics right now are that, many people look at Biden and the United States government supporting a genocide despite whatever he may be doing behind the scenes. And on top of that, Roland, we have the United States getting pulled into more other things going on in the region. Look what's happening with the Houthi rebels who are being backed by Iran. The United States just had more strikes, on some of their bases because of what's happening with the ships in the regions over there as well. And so this is getting increasingly worse for Biden. And this is the time where they need to really get serious about looking at this whole concept of unconditional aid for Israel. I understand that Israel is also of strategic importance for many other things in that region, as we don't need to get into tonight. But the fact of the matter is, there's a genocide that's happening. What Israel's calling South Africa the legal arm of Hamas. I mean, that's just ridiculous. ridiculous. There are clear rules of genocide, and only one of the conditions of genocide have to be met in order for it to be the case. And so Biden has to really be careful, because nobody gives a damn about what everybody else is saying right now as it relates to Trump and others. People are looking at the Biden administration. He went over there and gave Netanyahu the big hug and everything as supporting what they are looking at as genocide. And this can really, really hurt him with some voters who are already skeptical about him or just believe that he's responsible for the human rights violations. And Netanyahu, he just wants to keep power. He doesn't care about the Israeli people. He doesn't care about the hostages. This is not about the Jewish people. This is about him trying to keep himself out of jail once all of this stuff finally ends and he's no longer in power. I don't believe this is about protecting the Jewish people in any way, shape, or form. I believe he wanted this war, and he got a little bit more than he bargained for. He didn't expect what happened on October 7th to go down the way it did, as horrific as that was. But now he's like, oh, now I can go in and go even harder. And look what he's doing in the West Bank as well with the settler violence that's going on as well. He's got to go, and Biden has to get more vocal about calling for that two-state solution and withdrawing some of this aid until that happens.
Julian?
On October 7th, Israel had the sympathy of the world. People called it out. It was the obligatory statement we had condemned the October 7th. But now, what is the ratio? What's appropriate here? 12 to 1,400 Israelis were killed, but now we're talking about 25,000 Palestinians. So what's the ratio? Is it, 20 to 1? I mean, we're hitting on that. And that's just absurd. Netanyahu, Obakongo is absolutely right. Netanyahu isn't about anybody but Netanyahu. He didn't want to go to jail. Wish we could find him and Trump some majority jail cells, but that's another story. But he doesn't want to go to jail. He doesn't want this to be over. And let's not forget the role that Israel played in the creation of Hamas. So they created their own monster, their own enemy. But the world is peeling away, looking at this and saying, this is unacceptable. Bombing a university, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, telling people you're in the South, go south, and then when you get south, we're going to bomb the refugee camp. So it's almost like people cannot win in this situation, or the Palestinian people cannot win. And President Biden, I just saw something on television. They were saying these are U.S. bombs that are being used. So we might as well have bombed Gaza. We, the United States, might as well have bombed Gaza. So if I were Palestinian, well, I'll vote for any. I'm yellow dog Democrat, so I would vote. But I mean, if this is that important, there's so many people I know who will not vote. So especially younger Palestinians who will not vote, and others who are looking at this. This is a horrible human rights violation, series of violations, and nobody will put the brakes on Netanyahu. But we must. Will there be any place left for people to go? Who will make them whole? Will there be reparations? I mean, there are a series of questions that need to be asked, and the two-state solution, with obviously massive help for rebuilding, but a two-state solution is the only solution that is tenable.
Rita?
Yeah, this is really devastating what's happening in Gaza, because before October 7th, Gaza had a population of about 2 million. And of that 2 million, over 50% of the population was under the age of 20. So what you're mostly seeing is the bombing of essentially children. And so that's why the president has got a tough road here as it relates to re-election, because, people are looking at this, seeing our resources go to bombing children. And in addition, the president is saying, oh, well, I'm putting a lot of pressure on Israel to, do a ceasefire. No, you're not. You're sending them resources. And this goes back to what I've been saying over and over again, which is people can fact check and tell if what you are campaigning on is not what you're actually doing. Twice now, the president has gone around Congress in order to get resources to Israel. I only wish that he would have bent over backwards the way he's bending over to pass his agenda, which is what people voted for. The reason why people voted for him. I wish he had worked this hard as he's worked to get resources to Israel to bomb children on the stuff that we wanted. And so this is just another area where the president really needs to just level with the voters and say, and get serious about making sure that his actions match his words. Because at the end of the day, like I said before, the question is not going to be so much, are Democrats going to go over and vote for Trump? It's going to be whether or not people are just going to vote at all, because every voter has a list of priorities of how they determine if they're going to vote and who they will vote for. And for some, this may not be the top issue on their list as to whether or not they will vote. But for people of all ages who are Muslim, I am hearing Muslim voters say left and right, and it's not just the young people. And people who are not Muslim, they are saying left and right, I will not vote because I am not going to be able to get past the fact that my money went to the genocide of my people. And can you fault them for saying that? I mean, every voter has to set their priorities, and everyone has a line of what a person can do before they say, I'm not voting for that person. And it just feels like every day the Biden administration is waking up and not learning and not realizing that they are frequently crossing that line that makes people say, I'm not going to give you my vote.
Folks, hold tight 1 second. Going to a quick break. We come back. One of the children of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King has passed away. Dexter King died of prostate cancer. We'll talk about that next right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Black Table with me, Dr. Greg Carr, author Dr. Maribel Mori, on her astounding and enlightening new book, White Philanthropy, a history we're betting you've never heard before. Don't miss an eye-opening episode of The Black Table, only on Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
Hey, what's up? It's Sammy Roman. Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, today we learn of the passing of Dexter King, the youngest son of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King. He was 62 years old. He passed away at his home in Malibu, surrounded by his family. He was 62 years old. For a long time, he worked with the King Center. At one point was chairman of the King Center as well, which was established by his mother. But he was largely the president of the King Estate, which managed the licensing of his father's image and likeness. Out of all of the children, he had, of course, an uncanny, look, so much resembling his father. But the reality is, he was not necessarily as involvement in the movement as his siblings. The eldest daughter, Yolanda, she passed away several years ago. Ironically, when she showed up at Dexter's home, she collapsed there in the doorway. His brother, Martin Luther King III, as well as sister, Reverend Bernice King, have continued to be very vocal, very out front, very involved. But Dexter's focus largely was running the King Estate. What is interesting is that when you think about his legacy, part of that includes the back and forth fights among the siblings, suing his brothers and sisters when it came to control over the estate. Now, Coretta Scott King made Bernice King the executor of her estate. Dexter was the executor of the MLK estate, and at one point he even sued his sister, Reverend Bernice King, when it came to some letters Dr. King wrote to his wife, Coretta Scott King. The thing here, Julian, is again, here was a family that had to deal with their father's assassination at the age of 39. Them learning about him being murdered on television before their mother could even tell them. And so Dexter was not someone who was always out there. In fact, the last time I saw him, which was one of the very rare times I actually came across him, was at the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And many people were surprised when he made an appearance in the nation's capital at the Lincoln Memorial on that day.
You know, first of all, you have to wonder, as you say, about the trauma that these people experience, these siblings experience, the enormous trauma of having their dad assassinated, learning about it on television, and how it affected them, as well as their relationships with each other and their relationships with the world. How did they process this, and what did it mean? And so, whatever else we say, we have to just have enormous sympathy and understanding. The children of Dr. King, the children of Brother Malcolm, the impact of that kind of assassination, and what does it do to you? Secondly, I mean, he did good work. He was not the civil rights leader that his dad or his brother or his sisters were. They were far more active in the movement than he was, but everybody doesn't have to be out front. Everybody doesn't have to take to the mic. Sometimes people do make a difference in a very quiet way. I know that Coretta loved all of her children intensely, cared deeply for them, and wished them all good things in life. And 62 is a very young age to go. There was probably a lot more that he could have done. And one of the things that brothers who are listening, take care of your prostate cancer stuff, y'all. Go to the doctor. A lot of brothers don't like to go to the doctor. Nothing bad is going to happen to you if you go to the doctor. If you don't, something bad certainly will happen to you. I'm not saying that's the case in his case, but I'm just saying this may be a reminder to African-American men how important their health is and what they must do to stay around long enough to make a difference, another difference, a better difference.
Renita, he was named after Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where Dr. King pastored in Montgomery. This is what he told the New York Times in 1997. I've never seen myself the way the media has portrayed me as a leader. I'm not trying to have a constituency. I'm not trying to be preachy or be on a pedestal. I'm not trying to effect change on that level, not because it's not something that should be done, but that's just not my best destiny.
Well, it's exactly as you said, Roland. I think you summed up his life's work perfectly in introducing the story, because he is somebody that is not was not frequently seen, standing up for social justice in the same way that his siblings do as it relates to being a part of the King family. He was more tasked with, he was an attorney, and he was more tasked with keeping the legacy of his family alive, not from a social justice perspective, but from an actual tangible resources perspective, and managing the image of the family and his father in particular. And so things like what you mentioned, the King Center and other resources that help you remember his father's work, are really what he spent his life doing. And so even as somebody who lives right here in Atlanta, I can say that, you don't frequently see him in public. He's certainly not as public as, or certainly was not as public as his siblings. And I think that he really just focused a lot of his work on managing the family's image and making sure the legacy lives on. And so, everybody has a role to play. The resources that he helped to develop here to really make sure that the legacy of his father is not forgotten is extremely important. And these are things that cannot be moved in a time where we have governors and even now presidential candidates talking about wiping away Black history in this country. I would say that the work that Dexter did was very, very important.
Martin Luther King III on Congo said the sudden shock is devastating. It is hard to have the right words at a moment like this. We ask for your prayers at this time for the entire King family.
I mean, if there's any family member that has a direct road to heaven, I mean, it's the members of the King family. And like Dr. Malvo said, I mean, 62, it's just tragically young. And I remember those news stories about the family suing each other and all of the critique that they were getting, people hating on this side or choosing sides and the like. And I'm just thinking, some of our families, we'll argue over like a car after somebody's gone, or a TV or a house or something like that after somebody's gone, and families will tear each other up. I mean, this man, his father assassinated when he was 7 years old, and their entire life had to live in front of the entire world. How do you even manage that? And they've done it despite, those particular issues with such grace, trying to carry on the legacy of not one, but two giants as it relates to the civil rights field and activism. And so I give them all of the praises for everything that they've been able to navigate. I respect the fact that he wanted to be respected for the roles that he wanted to play, because I can't imagine the forces, especially with his resemblance to his father, I can't imagine the forces that wanted to push him out there in the forefront. But that behind the scenes work is just as important as anything else that any member of that family could do as relates to protecting the legacy of his family. We talk about legacy in so many different things, whether we're talking about wealth creation and all of these types of things. And so Dexter King needs to be remembered as somebody who wanted to protect his family and his legacy. And it's incredibly sad and tragic that he's gone. I read Reverend Bernice's thoughts about him earlier as well. And they just endured so much violence, whether it be Dr. King's mom, whether it be the brother, It's just sad. And though he's not dying by violence here, it's still just a tragic loss because of his age. And so my thoughts are out there with the family. And it's just a reminder to all of us that this family has given everything to this country and continues to do so. And their legacy needs to be respected and protected, because all of them are not going to be around here for forever as well. And we need to make sure that we're doing the best to uplift them in these moments, directly if we know them, or out in the public spaces as well. Rest in peace and power, brother.
Folks, that is it for us. Renita Omakongo, Dr. Malvo, I appreciate all three of y'all being with us today. Folks, thank you so very much. Again, let me thank the folks here at the Grove 23, the Florida course of Michael Jordan, for being hospitable host. I appreciate that. Let me thank my man Gary Sheffield for the invitation, and good luck in the Hall of Fame balloting. But folks are casting ballots now, so hopefully Gary will get that 75% threshold and be elected as one of the immortals in the Baseball Hall of Fame. All right, folks, don't forget to support us in what we do. You can support us by joining our Bring the Funk fan club. Your contributions are critically important for us to do the work that we do. The goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing at least $50 each over the course of the year. That's $4.19 a month, $13 a day. And then, of course, if you can't give that, give less, that's fine. You can give more, that'd be great as well. Send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, RolandSMartin.com. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also watch our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel on 4 different fast channels. Amazon News, simply go to Amazon Fire and go to News. You can check us out. You can say, Alexa, play news from the Black Star Network. You can also go to Plex TV, Amazon Freevee, and Amazon Prime Video. And folks, don't forget to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Available at bookstores nationwide. Download the audio version on Audible. And yes, it is yours truly reading it. All right, folks, I'll see you tomorrow from Florida. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now. Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?